So the question is, can a breakfast still contain too much sugar even when most of it comes naturally from whole food? I think it can. And today's breakfast is interesting because it has a very good sodium to potassium balance, but the overall amount of food makes the total sugar a lot higher than in the other examples. So today we are looking at the fourth and final breakfast from the examples you shared with me in the community tab. I do not know whether the viewer who shared this breakfast is personally dealing with breakouts, other skin concerns, or any other health issues. I am only using it as a practical example to show you how sodium, potassium, sugar, portion size, and the way different foods are combined can change the overall picture. I also want to explain what I would personally adjust. Now remember, the values are based on typical portions, so they are only estimates. They may not reflect the exact meal, but they can still help us understand what a breakfast like this could roughly contain. So this fourth breakfast was shared by a viewer using the display name Peter Steele. They wrote that they eat oats cooked in milk, 2 apples, 2 bananas, and almonds. For the original breakfast, I estimated about 90 to 180 milligrams of sodium, around 1,700 to 2,200 milligrams of potassium, and about 70 to 90 grams of total sugars. So purely from the perspective of sodium and potassium, this breakfast looks excellent. The sodium is very low, while the potassium is extremely high. But the amount of sugar is also very high for one breakfast. Now, most of that sugar would naturally come from the apples, bananas, and milk. So this is not the same as eating 70 to 90 grams of added sugar from sweets, syrups, or soft drinks. But I still think the total quantity matters. 2 apples and 2 bananas are already a very large amount of fruit to eat in one sitting. And this becomes even more noticeable if they are regular medium or large apples and conventional Cavendish bananas, rather than the much smaller local banana varieties that are also available in some countries. 2 regular apples and 2 regular bananas could already provide around 60 to 70 grams of natural sugar before we even include the milk. So at that point, I would no longer consider the amount moderate. It may make more sense if someone becomes very physically active immediately afterwards. But even then, I personally would not eat all 4 pieces of fruit with the oats and then potentially eat more food later as a snack. The almonds are another addition I would probably leave out because the meal is already very large. Adding almonds on top of the oats, milk, 2 apples and 2 bananas can make the entire breakfast feel much heavier. For some people, and maybe that includes you, nuts can also be difficult to digest and may contribute to bloating or digestive discomfort, especially when they are added to an already substantial meal. So unless the almonds were genuinely wanted, I do not see a real reason to add them, simply to include more healthy fats, protein or nutrients. At that point, you are back to assembling meals mainly to fit some weird nutritional target. So personally, I would make this breakfast much smaller and simpler. I would soak the oats in milk for 2 to 4 hours and eat them like that. Then I might have 1 small banana or a couple of very small bananas on top. I would leave out the 2 apples and almonds. The apples could still be eaten separately later if they were genuinely wanted, but personally I do not think they add much value here, so I would probably just stick with the banana. So my simpler version would be oats soaked in milk with 1 small banana. For that version, I estimated about 80 to 130 milligrams of sodium, around 700 to 900 milligrams of potassium, and about 20 to 25 grams of total sugars. The sodium would remain very low and the potassium would still be several times higher. But the amount of sugar would become much more moderate and the meal would also be a lot lighter and potentially easier to digest. So I think the main lesson from this example is that a good sodium to potassium balance does not automatically mean that the portion size is ideal. Even when the foods are whole and the sugar occurs naturally, eating a very large amount at once can still be unnecessary. So to the viewer who shared this breakfast, I hope this gave you a helpful way to look at the portion and showed you how it could be made simpler without losing the excellent sodium to potassium balance. Thank you again for sharing your breakfast with me and allowing me to use it as an example. And thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!